"Once I use my tongue on you, there's no turning back," Cowboy warned. She shivered, then gave in. The cowboy lived on the edge of a wide open plain where the land rolled gently into the horizon, and the sky always seemed bigger than his worries. His ranch was not large, but it was honest. Every fence post had been set by his own hands, every roof board nailed with care. People in the small town nearby knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself, a man who worked hard and spoke little. They did not know much about his past, and he liked it that way. The land gave him peace, and the simple work of caring for animals and soil kept his mind clear. One late afternoon, dark clouds gathered in the distance. The wind changed its tone, moving from a soft whisper to a low warning. The cowboy finished tying down a loose gate and turned toward the house just as the first drops of rain fell. He had seen many storms, but this one felt different. The air was heavy, and thunder rolled across the sky like a distant drum. As he reached the porch, he noticed a figure walking up the long dirt path. It was a woman, her coat pulled tight around her, her hair damp from the rain. She looked tired, not just from the weather, but from something deeper. Her steps were slow, as if each one carried a weight he could not see. The cowboy paused, unsure at first, then stepped forward. She stopped a few feet away, clearly unsure of what to say. Her eyes moved from the house to the land behind him and back again. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. She said she had been traveling for days and had lost her way when the storm began. She asked if she could wait out the rain on his porch. The cowboy nodded and opened the door. He did not ask many questions. He never did. He simply offered a dry place and a warm cup of coffee. Inside, the house smelled of wood and fresh bread. It was simple, but clean and welcoming. The woman stepped in carefully, as if afraid to disturb the quiet that filled the room. They sat at the small wooden table near the window. Rain tapped against the glass and thunder shook the walls. The cowboy poured coffee into 2 chipped cups and slid one across to her. She wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth spread through her fingers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable, but it was full of unspoken thoughts. The woman finally thanked him. She said her name, and he gave his in return. It was a simple exchange, but it felt like more than that. It felt like the start of something neither of them had planned. As the storm grew stronger, he offered her a place to rest. There was a small room down the hall, clean and quiet. She hesitated at first, but the thunder outside made her decision for her. She agreed, and he showed her the way, keeping a respectful distance. He told her she could stay as long as the storm lasted. Later, as the rain continued, they found themselves back at the table, sharing a simple meal. He had made soup from what he had on hand, and she smiled at the effort. They talked about small things at first. She asked about the land, the animals, and the work he did each day. He answered in short, honest sentences. He asked where she had come from, and she gave him a general answer, not too detailed. He could tell there was more to her story, but he did not push. The night grew darker, and the storm slowly began to fade. The sound of rain softened, and the wind calmed. Outside, the world seemed washed clean. Inside, something else had changed. The cowboy felt it, even if he could not name it. The woman's presence filled the space in a way he had not felt in a long time. He noticed how she looked at the small things in the house, like the old picture on the wall and the worn rug on the floor. It was as if she was seeing more than just objects. She was seeing a life, a story written in quiet moments and hard work. In return, she noticed how he moved, careful and steady, like someone who had learned to take each step with purpose. As the evening went on, she began to share more about herself. She spoke of a place she once called home and the choices that led her away from it. She did not go into details, but her voice carried a mix of regret and strength. The cowboy listened without interrupting. He did not offer advice or judgment. He simply listened, and that seemed to mean more to her than anything else. At one point she asked why he lived so far from town. He thought for a moment before answering. He said he had made mistakes in his younger days, and this land gave him a chance to start over. He did not say what those mistakes were, but the weight of them was clear in his eyes. She nodded, understanding without needing more words. The night grew quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and fresh. They stepped outside onto the porch. "Pa?" The sky was clear now, filled with stars. The land stretched out in all directions, silent and calm. The woman took a deep breath, as if trying to take it all in. The cowboy stood beside her, hands resting on the wooden railing. He felt a pull he had not felt in years, a sense that this moment mattered. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would explain what he felt. But the words did not come easily. Instead, he spoke honestly. He told her that staying here, staying with him, would not be easy. Life on the ranch was hard, and the town nearby was not always kind to people who carried stories and scars. He said that once someone chose to be part of his life, it meant walking a long road, one filled with work, trust, and change. He wanted her to know that before she made any choice. She listened carefully, her eyes fixed on the stars above. When she looked back at him, there was a softness in her expression, mixed with something stronger. She said she was tired of running. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, she was grateful to be here, in this quiet place, with someone who did not ask for more than she could give. They stood there for a long moment, the silence wrapping around them like a blanket. The world felt far away, and the future felt close. When they finally went back inside, the house felt warmer than before. The cowboy showed her to the room again and wished her a good night. She thanked him, her voice gentle. As he turned to leave, she paused him with a simple word, his name, spoken softly. He looked back, and they shared a small, meaningful smile. He returned to his own room, but sleep did not come easily. His mind was full of thoughts about the woman in the next room, about the choices they both faced. He knew that by opening his door to her, he had opened something else as well, something deeper and harder to close. Outside, the land rested under the stars, quiet and patient. Inside, two lives stood at the edge of change, even if neither of them fully understood it yet. The night passed slowly, carrying with it the promise of a morning that would not be the same as the day before. Morning came slowly across the wide land, carried by soft light and the quiet sounds of animals waking. The cowboy rose before the sun, as he always did. He washed his face with cold water, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside. The air was clean after the storm, and the ground still held the smell of rain. For a moment he stood still, listening to the peaceful world around him. Then he remembered the woman sleeping in the room down the hall, and the calm morning felt different, fuller somehow. He began his usual work, feeding the horses and checking the fences. The animals moved gently, their breath visible in the cool air. His hands worked without thought, but his mind kept returning to the night before. He wondered if she would leave when she woke, if the quiet promise of the stars had only been a passing moment. When he returned to the house, the smell of coffee met him at the door. He paused, surprised. Inside, the woman stood by the stove, holding a cup. She looked more rested now, her face softer in the morning light. She smiled when she saw him, a small, careful smile, like she was still unsure of her place. She said she hoped he did not mind, that she had found the coffee and wanted to help. He told her it was fine, and for the first time, he felt the house was not only his anymore. They sat together at the table, sharing a simple breakfast. The quiet between them was easy, not heavy. They talked about the weather and the animals, about how the storm had cleared the dust from the sky. After breakfast, he offered to show her the ranch. She agreed, pulling on her coat and following him outside. They walked along the fence line, the land stretching wide around them. He explained how he cared for the animals, how he learned to read the land for signs of trouble or change. She listened closely, asking questions that showed she truly wanted to understand. At one point, they stopped near a small hill that looked out over the fields. The wind moved through the tall grass, making it ripple like water. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the sound and the space. She said it felt like a place where a person could breathe again. He nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. As the day went on, she began to help him with small tasks. She carried tools, held boards steady, and laughed quietly when she made a mistake. He showed her how to move carefully around the animals, how to keep calm so they would not feel afraid. Each small success seemed to lift her spirit, and he found himself smiling more than he had in years. In the afternoon, they went into town to pick up supplies. The road was long and dusty, and they rode in silence for part of the way. The town appeared slowly on the horizon, a cluster of buildings and moving figures. The woman grew quieter as they drew closer. He noticed the way her hands tightened in her lap, the way her eyes scanned the streets before they even arrived. People in town noticed her right away. Some looked curious, others cautious. Whispers followed them as they walked past the shops. The cowboy felt a familiar tension in the air, the kind that came when something new entered a small, close world. He kept his steps steady and his head high, walking beside her without hesitation. They bought what they needed and spoke politely to the shopkeepers. A few people asked questions about the woman, but she answered only in general terms. The cowboy did not add much. He could sense her discomfort, and he wanted to get back to the open land as soon as possible. On the ride home, she finally spoke about it. She said she was not used to being seen that way, like every person wanted to know her story. He told her that small towns often did that, not always out of unkindness, but out of habit. He said the land did not ask questions, and that was why he loved it. Back at the ranch, they unloaded the supplies and settled into the quiet of the afternoon. The woman helped prepare dinner, and they talked more freely now. She shared a little more about where she had come from, about a life that had felt too tight, too full of expectations she could not meet. She said she had made a choice to leave, even though it meant walking into the unknown. The cowboy listened, understanding more than he said. He told her about the mistakes he had made, about how he once believed he had to be someone else to be accepted. He said the land taught him that it was better to be honest and steady, even if it meant being alone for a long time. As the sun began to set, the sky turned warm with color. They sat on the porch again, watching the light fade. The woman asked him what he wanted for the future. He thought for a long time before answering. He said he wanted peace, and he wanted to build something that would last, even if it was small. She said she wanted the same thing, but she did not know if she deserved it. He looked at her, surprised by the weight of her words. He told her that everyone deserved a chance to start again, even if they did not believe it themselves. That night, a knock came at the door. The cowboy opened it to find a man from town, his face serious. He said there had been talk, that people were asking questions about the woman, and why she was staying at the ranch. He warned the cowboy that not everyone would be kind about it. After the man left, the house felt quieter than before. The woman stood near the table, her face pale. She said she did not want to cause trouble. She said she had brought enough of that with her already. The cowboy told her she was not a burden. He said that people could talk, but what mattered was what they chose to do. He told her that if she stayed, he would stand by her, even if it made things harder. She looked at him, searching his face. After a long moment, she nodded. She said she did not know how long she would stay, but for now, she wanted to try. That night, as they each went to their own rooms, the air felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. The land outside was quiet, but inside the house, two hearts were learning what it meant to share space, trust, and the risk of being seen. The cowboy lay awake, thinking about the road ahead. He knew it would not be easy. The town, the past, and the unknown future all waited beyond the safety of the ranch. But for the first time in a long while, he did not feel alone in facing it. In the next room, the woman stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. She thought about the choices that had led her here, about the man who had opened his door without asking for her story. She felt both fear and hope, mixed together in a way that made her chest feel tight. Outside, the stars rose again over the wide land. The night held its quiet promise, and the ranch stood as a small island of light and warmth in the darkness. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was no longer empty. The next morning did not feel as calm as the ones before. The sky was clear, but there was a sense of waiting in the air, like something unseen was moving closer. The cowboy felt it as soon as he stepped outside. The land looked the same, wide and open, but his heart did not feel as steady. He glanced toward the house, thinking of the woman inside and the talk from town the night before. He went through his usual work, but his hands moved slower. He kept looking down the long road that led toward town, half expecting to see someone coming. The horses shifted in their stalls, sensing his unease. He spoke to them softly, trying to calm both them and himself. Inside, the woman woke with a heavy feeling in her chest. The man from town's warning still echoed in her mind. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, thinking about whether she should leave before things became harder. The ranch had started to feel like a safe place, but she knew safe places did not always stay that way. She finally rose and went to the kitchen. The cowboy was not there yet. She made coffee and stood by the window, watching the land. She thought about her past, about the people she had left behind, and about the reason she had chosen to walk away. Some of those reasons still felt strong. Others now felt less certain. When the cowboy came in, he could tell something was different. Her smile was small and unsure. They sat together, but the quiet felt heavier than before. He asked if she was all right. She said she was, but her voice did not carry much strength. Later that morning, dust rose on the road. A wagon appeared in the distance, moving slowly toward the ranch. The cowboy noticed it first. He felt his shoulders tense. The woman saw his reaction and turned to look. Her heart sank as she recognized the shape of the wagon. The wagon stopped near the gate. Two figures climbed down. One was a man she knew from her past, someone who had once been close to her family. The other was a woman from the same place she had left behind. The sight of them brought back a rush of memories, both warm and painful. The cowboy walked forward, placing himself slightly in front of the woman without thinking about it. The visitors greeted him politely, then turned their attention to her. They asked her why she had left, why she had not sent word, and what she was doing so far from home. The woman struggled to answer. Her voice shook as she spoke about needing space, about wanting to find her own path. The man from her past said she had caused worry and confusion. He said people back home were talking, wondering what she had done and why she had disappeared. The cowboy listened quietly, watching her face. He could see how hard it was for her to stand there and face those questions. When the man's words grew sharper, the cowboy stepped in. He said she did not owe anyone an explanation for trying to live her life. He said this was his land, and she was welcome here. The visitors looked surprised. They exchanged a glance. The woman from her past softened a little and said they did not come to cause trouble. They only wanted to understand. The man nodded, though his expression remained firm. The woman took a deep breath. She told them about feeling trapped by expectations, about wanting more than the life that had been planned for her. She said leaving had been painful, but staying would have been worse. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The visitors listened. The woman from her past wiped her eyes. The man looked away for a moment, then said he hoped she would find what she was looking for. They did not stay long after that. They climbed back into the wagon and drove away, leaving a trail of dust behind them. When the road was empty again, the woman felt her legs grow weak. The cowboy led her to the porch and sat beside her. She stared out at the land, tears in her eyes. She said she did not know if she had done the right thing. The cowboy told her that doing the right thing did not always feel good. He said it often felt like standing alone in a wide place, unsure of which way to go. But he also said that courage did not come from knowing the outcome. It came from choosing to move forward anyway. That afternoon, the town's presence seemed to follow them back to the ranch. A few riders passed by on the road, slowing as they went. They did not stop, but their eyes lingered. The woman felt like she was being watched, judged by people who did not know her story. The cowboy could feel her growing fear. He suggested they take a ride across the far side of the land, where the hills rose and the view stretched even wider. They saddled the horses and rode out, leaving the road and the town behind. As they climbed higher, the air grew cooler. The land opened up into a broad valley, quiet and empty. They stopped at the top of a hill and looked out over everything. The world felt far away there, small and distant. The woman breathed deeply. She said she wished life could always feel this simple. The cowboy said it could not, but moments like this could remind them why they kept trying. She asked him why he was willing to stand up for her, even though it might bring trouble. He thought for a long time before answering. He said he knew what it felt like to be judged by a past that did not tell the whole story. He said he did not want her to face that alone. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not only from pain. She thanked him, her voice barely above a whisper. The wind moved through the grass around them, and for a moment everything felt still and right. When they returned to the ranch, evening was falling. The sky glowed with soft colors, and the air felt calm. They went inside and prepared dinner together. Their movements were slow and careful, like they were both thinking about the same thing but not saying it. After they ate, there was another knock at the door. This time, it was two people from town. They were polite, but their questions were clear. They asked who the woman was and how long she planned to stay. They spoke of rumors and concerns, of how people did not like what they did not understand. The cowboy answered calmly. He said she was his guest and that she would stay as long as she needed. He said the ranch was his responsibility, and he would not let talk from town decide who could or could not be there. The visitors exchanged looks, then nodded. They did not agree, but they did not argue either. They left with a warning that the town would keep watching. When the door closed, the woman felt her fear return. She said she did not want to be the reason he lost the small piece he had built. She said maybe it would be better if she left before things became worse. The cowboy looked at her, really looked at her, and shook his head. He said peace that came from turning someone away was not real peace. He said he had spent too many years running from hard choices, and he would not do it again. She asked him what would happen if the town turned against them. He said he did not know, but he said he would rather face that than watch her walk away because of fear. They stood there, the space between them full of unspoken feelings. Finally, she nodded. She said she was tired of running. She said she wanted to stay, even if it meant facing the town and her past. That night they sat on the porch again, watching the stars. The land was quiet, but the future felt loud in their minds. The woman leaned back in her chair, looking up at the sky. She said she had never felt so scared and so hopeful at the same time. The cowboy smiled softly. He said that was what it felt like to stand on the edge of something new. As the night grew deeper, the ranch stood firm under the wide sky. Two people, each carrying their own history and doubts, sat side by side, choosing to face whatever came next, together. The path ahead was unclear, but it was no longer a path they would walk alone. The days that followed felt heavier, as if the air itself carried the weight of what had been said and what still waited to be faced. The ranch stayed quiet, but the silence no longer felt peaceful. It felt like a pause before something changed. The cowboy kept working from sunrise to sunset. He fixed broken boards on the fence, cleaned the barn, and checked the far edges of his land. He moved with steady purpose, but his thoughts often drifted back to the town and the people who were watching. He knew small places remembered everything. A new face, a new story, a new choice could become the center of many talks. The woman tried to help where she could. She swept the floors, washed dishes, and carried water from the well. She wanted to feel useful, wanted to prove to herself that she belonged here, even if only for a while. But every time she saw a rider pass on the road, her heart tightened. One afternoon, the cowboy suggested they go into town together. He said hiding would only make things worse. She hesitated, but finally agreed. They rode side by side, the road stretching ahead of them. The sound of the horses' hooves was the only noise for a long time. As they entered town, heads turned. Conversations slowed. A few people nodded politely, but others looked away. The woman felt the weight of their eyes. She kept her gaze forward, trying to stay calm. They stopped at the general store. Inside, the shopkeeper greeted them, but his voice was careful. He asked how the ranch was doing, asked about the weather, and spoke of small things. Then, without meaning to, he asked the woman where she planned to go next. The question hung in the air. The woman opened her mouth, then closed it. Again. The cowboy answered for her. He said she was staying at the ranch for now. His tone was calm but firm. The shopkeeper nodded and changed the subject, but the moment left a mark. As they left the store, the woman's hands shook. She said she did not like feeling like she had to explain herself to everyone. The cowboy told her that she did not owe the town anything. He said people often asked questions because they were afraid of what they did not understand. He said it was not her job to make them comfortable. They walked down the street, stopping to buy a few supplies. Some people greeted them kindly, offering small smiles. Others stayed quiet. The woman noticed both, and it made her feel torn. She did not want to be seen as a problem, but she also did not want to disappear. On the ride back to the ranch, she finally spoke. She said she had always tried to fit into the life that was planned for her. She said she followed rules, met expectations, and smiled when she was supposed to. but inside, she had felt like she was slowly fading. The cowboy listened. He said he knew that feeling. He said there was a time when he tried to be someone he was not, just to be accepted. He said it had cost him years of his life and a lot of peace. That evening, a group of people from town arrived at the ranch. They stood near the gate, not coming closer, but not leaving either. The cowboy walked out to meet them. The woman stayed on the porch, watching, her heart pounding. The people spoke about rumors, about worry, about how change made them uneasy. They said they did not want trouble. The cowboy told them he did not want trouble either. He said the ranch was a place of work and rest, not a place for judging or pushing people away. One man stepped forward and said the woman's past was being talked about. He said some believed she was running from something serious. The cowboy answered that everyone ran from something at some point, even the people standing there. The group fell quiet. A woman in the crowd said they were only trying to protect their town. The cowboy said protecting a place did not mean closing it off from people who needed a chance. The woman finally stepped down from the porch and walked toward them. Her legs felt weak, but she kept moving. She told them she was not there to cause harm. She said she had made choices that led her here, and she was trying to build something better, not tear anything down. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. She said she understood their fear, but she asked them to understand hers as well. She said starting over was hard enough without feeling like every step was being watched. The group listened. Some looked moved. Others still looked unsure. After a long moment, one of the older men nodded and said he hoped she found what she was looking for. The group slowly turned and left, their footsteps fading down the road. When they were gone, the woman let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. The cowboy walked over and stood beside her. He did not say anything. He did not need to. That night, they sat inside, the house quiet around them. The woman said she never thought she would stand in front of a group of strangers and speak like that. She said it scared her more than anything else she had done. The cowboy told her that courage often felt like fear that decided to move anyway. The next few days were calmer. Fewer riders passed by. The air felt lighter, though the sense of being watched never fully disappeared. The woman began to relax a little. She laughed more easily. She started to talk about small dreams, like planting a garden or learning to ride better. Well, the cowboy found himself thinking about those dreams when he worked. He imagined the ranch with more life, more signs of care beyond just survival. He had never planned for that. He had built the ranch to be a place of quiet, a place to hide from the world. Now, it was becoming something else. One evening, as the sun set, the woman asked him why he had chosen to live alone for so long. He thought about it carefully. He said he had lost someone important years ago, and after that he did not trust himself to let anyone get close again. She asked if he was afraid of losing someone else. He nodded. He said it felt safer to be alone than to risk that kind of pain again. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said she was afraid too. She said leaving her old life had hurt people she cared about. She said sometimes she wondered if she deserved to be happy after that. The cowboy looked at her and said, happiness was not something people earned. He said it was something people chose to accept when it came, even if they felt unsure. They sat in silence, watching the sky turn dark. Now the stars began to appear, one by one. The woman said the stars made her feel small, but also free. The cowboy said they made him feel steady, like the world was bigger than his worries. Late that night, the woman went to her room and began to pack a small bag. She did not know why she was doing it. Maybe it was a habit from running. Maybe it was a way to feel like she still had control. The cowboy saw the bag the next morning. He asked her about it. She hesitated, then told him she was afraid of staying too long and making things harder for him. She said she did not want to become a problem he felt stuck with. He told her she was not a problem. He said he chose to open his door to her, and he chose to keep it open. He said she did not have to decide everything at once. She could stay, breathe, and take things one day at a time. Oh. She looked at the bag, then back at him. Slowly, she unpacked it and put the clothes back in the drawer. That day, they worked together on the far side of the land, fixing a fence that had been leaning for years. The work was hard, but it felt good. As they finished, they stood back and looked at what they had done. The woman smiled and said it felt like they were building something, not just fixing what was broken. The cowboy nodded. He said sometimes that was the same thing. As evening came, the ranch glowed softly in the fading light. The land was quiet, and the road was empty. For the first time in a long while, the woman felt like she was not just passing through. The cowboy felt like the place he had built to hide was becoming a place to live again. They sat on the porch, side by side, not talking much. They did not need to. The sound of the wind and the distant call of an animal filled the space between them. Both of them knew there were still questions ahead. The town, the past, and the future all waited beyond the safety of this moment. But for now, they had chosen to stay, to face things together, and to keep building something new, even if they did not yet know what it would become. The morning light came gently, like it did not want to disturb the quiet that had settled over the ranch. The cowboy woke before the sun, as always, but this time he did not rush out the door. He sat on the edge of his bed and listened to the sounds of the house, the soft creak of the wood, the distant call of a bird, the steady breathing from the other room. It felt different now. It felt like the house held more than just his own footsteps and thoughts. He stepped outside and watched the sky turn from dark blue to pale gold. The land looked calm, wide and open, just as it always had. But inside him, something had changed. The ranch was no longer only a place to hide. It was becoming a place where something new could grow. The woman joined him on the porch a short time later. She wrapped her coat around herself and took in the cool air. She said the mornings here made her feel like the world was starting fresh every day. The cowboy smiled and said maybe it was. They shared breakfast in quiet comfort. There was no heavy silence now, only the kind that came from being at ease with someone else's presence. Afterward, they planned the day together. There was a section of land near the creek that needed clearing, and the woman said she wanted to help. They walked out to the far side of the ranch, carrying tools and water. The creek moved slowly, its surface shining in the sun. The woman knelt by the water and touched it with her fingers, laughing softly at how cold it was. The cowboy watched her, feeling a warmth he had not felt in a long time. As they worked, they talked about small things. She spoke about memories from her childhood, about running through open fields and climbing trees. He spoke about learning to ride and care for animals, about his first days on his own land. Their words were simple, but they carried meaning. Each story felt like another piece of a bridge being built between them. By midday, they sat in the shade to rest. The woman looked out at the land and said she never thought she would find a place that felt like it could be home again. The cowboy asked her what home meant to her. She thought for a moment, then said it meant a place where she did not have to pretend, where she could be quiet or loud or unsure without feeling like she had to explain herself. The cowboy nodded. He said that was what he wanted too, even if he had not known how to say it before. Later that afternoon, a rider appeared on the road. The cowboy felt a familiar tension, but the rider did not stop. He tipped his hat in greeting and continued on. The woman noticed and let out a breath. It was a small moment, but it felt like a sign that the town was starting to see them as part of the land, not just something new to question. As the sun began to lower, they headed back to the house. The woman suggested cooking something different for dinner, something she remembered from her past. The cowboy agreed, even though he had never tried it before. The kitchen filled with new smells and sounds. They laughed when something did not turn out the way they expected, and they worked together to fix it. When they finally sat down to eat, the meal was simple, but it felt special. It felt like something they had made together, not just food, but a moment. That evening, there was another knock at the door. The cowboy opened it to find an older woman from town. She held a small basket in her hands. She said she had heard the woman at the ranch was trying to start fresh. She said she remembered what it was like to be new somewhere and not know if anyone would welcome you. She offered the basket as a gift, filled with bread and fruit. The woman from the ranch thanked her, her eyes bright with surprise. The older woman smiled and said, "Everyone deserved a second chance, even if it took time for others to understand that." After she left, the woman set the basket on the table and stood quietly for a moment. She said she never thought a small gesture could mean so much. The cowboy said sometimes the smallest things were the hardest to give and the most important to receive. The days that followed began to settle into a rhythm. The woman became part of the ranch in a natural way. She learned how to care for the animals, how to fix small things around the house, and how to read the signs of the weather. The cowboy found himself teaching her without thinking about it, enjoying the way she listened and tried, even when things did not go perfectly. They went into town together more often. The looks they received were softer now. Some people even greeted them by name. The woman started to feel like she was not just passing through anymore. She was becoming part of the place, slowly but surely. One afternoon, as they walked back from town, the woman stopped near the hill that looked out over the fields. She said this was where she had first felt like she could breathe again. The cowboy remembered that day too. He said it was the day he realized his quiet life did not have to stay empty. They sat in the grass, watching the clouds move across the sky. The woman asked him if he ever regretted opening his door to her. He did not hesitate. He said no. He said it had been one of the hardest choices he had made, but also one of the best. She asked him what he saw for the future now. He looked out at the land, at the fences they had fixed, the small garden they had started, the house that no longer felt so empty. He said he saw a place that could be more than just his. He saw a place where people could come to rest, to work, and to start over. The woman smiled and said she liked that idea. She said maybe the ranch could become a place of second chances, not just for them, but for others who needed it. That night, as they sat on the porch, the sky filled with stars again. The land was quiet and the road was empty. The woman leaned back in her chair and said she used to think running was the only way to survive. Now she thought staying might be just as brave. The cowboy said he used to think being alone was the safest way to live. Now he knew that sharing the risk of life with someone else could make it stronger, not weaker. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the night. The future did not feel so heavy anymore. It felt open, like the land in front of them, full of paths that had not yet been walked. In the weeks that followed, the ranch slowly became known for something new. Travelers began to stop by, not just for water or directions, but for a warm meal and a place to rest. The woman welcomed them with a kind smile. The cowboy offered what he could. Word spread that this was a place where people were not judged by where they came from, but by how they chose to move forward. One evening, after the last traveler had gone and the house was quiet again, the woman stood in the doorway and looked around. She said she could hardly believe how much had changed. The cowboy said change did not always come in big, loud moments. Sometimes it came in small choices made every day. She walked out onto the porch and looked at the stars. She said she felt like she finally knew who she was, not because someone else told her, but because she had chosen for herself. The cowboy joined her and said he felt the same. They stood there, side by side, not needing to say much. The land stretched out in front of them, calm and steady. The road was still there, leading to the town, to the past, and to whatever the future might bring. But the ranch behind them felt strong, built on work, trust, and the courage to stay when running would have been easier. As the night deepened, the wind moved gently through the grass. The stars shone quietly above. Two lives, once moving in different directions, now shared the same path, not because it was easy, but because it felt right. The story of the cowboy and the woman was no longer just about a storm that brought a stranger to a porch. It had become a story about choice, about standing in the open and deciding to build something instead of walking away. It was a story still being written, one day at a time, under the wide sky and across the honest land they now called home.